debut novel, which is called Intersections. It's a crime thriller focused on, thank you, Gautam, focused on the Mumbai police, and it's a story around that. But he's written the story, so he's going to talk about it. And I still haven't got my copy, and it's not really a book you can get very easily, but we've managed to get 3 copies for 3 winners today. So I'm wishing all of you all the luck. This is a beautiful, beautiful book, and Gautam's going to sign it himself. He's going to come down to the IndiaSpend office, sign the copies, and it's going to be personalized. So you're very, very special. Gautam, thank you so much for joining us. Well, we just reached out to him, and he just so graciously said, I don't think we even give him a chance. We just said, listen, you have to come on India Fact Quiz. We give these books, your book is selected, and you've got to be on the quiz. So thank you so much for joining us. You're on mute, Gautam.
Story of my life. Thank you for having me. It's great to be part of this. I love quiz shows in general, although I never participate because I am afraid of making a fool of myself in public. But it's the first time I'm actually being part of a quiz show and where my novel is being featured. So it's really special for me too.
Okay, so we absolutely are very biased to debut novelists. We remain unbiased with everything else. We focus on data for that, but we really are extremely sort of appreciative of the fact that this is not something which is very easy to come by, and you've published a book fairly young in life. And not only that, you've been toggling an everyday job, like being a crime reporter in Hindustan Times, living in a city like Bombay, which is not the easiest of combinations. So just wanted to ask, Gautam, what was your process when you were doing all of this together? And also, if you can just tell us, what were those factors? You talked about best reporters having best bosses, but what are those factors that actually helped you in your journey to becoming a novelist, a published author?
Well, I think my passion for writing fiction was a big factor because that's something I've been doing since I was in college. I used to write for our campus newspaper when I was doing my bachelor's in mass media. And even though I write non-fiction for a living on a daily basis, I always try to keep that passion for writing fiction alive. So my hard disk of my laptop is filled with short stories which nobody has read till date. But I think once the contract was done, once my pitch was approved by Westland, and once my editors at the Hindu, I was at the Hindu at the time, once they gave me permission to do this, I think it was just something I had to do because it has been a dream for me since as long as I can remember. So it was quite tough, yes. Especially when I was at the Hindu, I was the only crime reporter for the Mumbai edition, covering Mumbai, Navi Mumbai, and Thane. So it took out a lot of my time, and I would literally leave from work at I think 10:30 or 11. I would reach a cafe near the railway station. I would sit there for an hour and write, and then catch the last train home, because I knew that once I get home, I might not have the best ambience or atmosphere or opportunity to write, and I needed that seclusion to be able to write. So in hindsight, I think I should have given that cafe a credit in my book, but that is basically how I managed it. And there were days when I could not write. There were days when I did not have time. There were days when I did not have energy, because some days I would write something like 6 to 7 news stories in a single day and then leave from work. And the last thing I wanted to do was to touch my fingers to the keyboard once again. So there was also a lot of anxiety associated with it. I used to think I'm going to miss my deadline. I used to think that as a debut writer, my publisher is going to be annoyed with me if I miss my deadline. So that did happen a lot. And I was constantly dissatisfied with my writing. There are so many things which I have written down and then just done a control A and deleted everything because I was like, this is rubbish. I need to do better. And I think this is one of the areas where my mentor, Hussain Zaidi, somebody who's been behind me like a rock for the last 14 years, he kept telling me that, boss, you're setting the bar too high for yourself. And I kept telling him that it is okay if I set the bar too high. My fear is if I set the bar too low. And our WhatsApp chat window is full of such conversations at 1 o'clock in the night. So I think all of these things helped make Intersections what it is as a finished product that you hold in your hands today. And it was so supremely gratifying when serving officers would call me up saying, boss, I read your book and I could see my life in that book. So I think those are the biggest compliments I received. So, yeah.
So coming to that, now you obviously hang around police stations a lot in Mumbai. I would guess so. So two things I wanted to ask. One is the scramble for trying to get the news first, or trying to get the news, or what's that? How do you actually get the stories out? When you're a crime beat reporter. And the second question I wanted to ask was, you have to cultivate relationships. You have to, how does that work, and how difficult is that whole process, and how much of that time does it take away? And then, what's the time that you get to actually look into the other stuff of it? I mean, I just sort of want to understand I'm fascinated, actually. Haven't spoken to very many crime reporters, to be honest. You must be having a treasure trove of very interesting, bizarre stories.
Oh, yes, I do. And I think that's one of the things I love the most about my job, that even after 14 odd years on the beat, every day I go out on the field, I learn something new, or I see something interesting. And it just adds to my knowledge. It adds to the context that I can give to my news reports, the small nuances which I can add. So that is one thing I love about my job. And yes, it is tough because it involves spending long hours waiting outside officers' cabins, waiting for them to call you inside, and then they'll be most anxious to send you packing, so you only get 10 or 15 minutes with them. And there are these little tricks we employ. We first ask for water, that buys us 2 more minutes. If they offer us tea, we never refuse, that buys us 10 more minutes. So we do this all the time. And I've been fortunate enough to join the beat at a time when there was no WhatsApp. And I say fortunate because today there are actual official WhatsApp groups where press updates are shared, and they become our first lead for our story. What we do with it later is our responsibility. How hard we work on it and how much we flesh it out in detail is the individual reporter's responsibility. But at least something has happened somewhere is something we get to know from our WhatsApp groups. In 2008, when I joined, we had to literally call up the control room thrice a day. And the control room, like any other police officer, is under absolutely no obligation to give out information to the press. So it all boiled down to who answers the call and what mood he or she is in. And that is how our initial leads would come from. And then if my office was in Lower Parel and the lead pertains to something that's happened in Daisar, then I have to go rushing out to the station, catch a train, get there as fast as I can, because there are deadlines, there are concerns that if you do not turn in the story in time, it will be slashed down to a brief. You have to get photos. It is something that a lot of reporters don't understand. But if you have a story which you want displayed well, then ensuring a good display becomes your responsibility. The editor won't care if you do not put in the effort. The person making the page will not care. He will only see a 350 word chunk of text which he will hide in 2 columns somewhere.
Right.
If you have a photo with it, it automatically becomes 4 columns. These are things which I learned again from Mr. Zaidi and a wonderful chief reporter named Binu Nair at the Asian Age, who taught me these things, because they both come from tabloid backgrounds, from Midday and Mumbai Mirror, but they both very beautifully adopted the tabloid rules for a broadsheet newspaper and taught me why it is not really of the best policy to frown on tabloids, because they may be a lot of things, but they know how to package their stories. So that is how it began. Yeah. And today, yes, I still hang around outside police stations, like you said, and drink a lot of bad tea at police stations, slightly better tea with the senior officers, a lot of gossip, a lot of observations. Yesterday, I went to a police station where two senior inspectors were sitting, and their crisis at that time was that they were going to meet their superior to wish him happy Diwali, but both their gifts were gift wrapped with the same kind of paper, which they didn't want. They wanted a different paper for each of them, and the constable was scrambling around to find a different wrapping paper. So it is funny to you and me, but in a uniformed force, those courtesy calls are very important. So
no, that's fascinating. Also, you get to see various facets when it comes to this whole world, and therefore you also get to meet a personality like a Sudha Bharadwaj, and you get to interview her. And now that she is working with under trials and trying to get them justice, I think, it's very fascinating to, that you can actually see the entire gamut. You're seeing the entire range of, this whole aspect, which is so elusive, right, to middle class India, which is rule of law, because middle class India is always taught not to go near police stations, don't have anything, with that world. But at the end of the day, this is, you never say never. But I just wanted to ask you one question, and I'm sure people are very excited to get on with the quiz. But when we talk about the Mumbai police, and at one time they were considered, or probably they still are considered, the best in the country, and you go to any of the police stations, clearly they're so understaffed, they're so stretched for resources. They don't even get adequate funding when they want for basic things. Gautam, what has been your experience or takeaways or observations that we as citizens need to keep in mind when we either look at the police or we have a perception, or what are those things that we need to keep in mind?
I would say that, I love the Mumbai police because I've observed them closely for so many years. But one good cop should not reflect on the entire department, just as one bad cop should not do the same. Yeah. It is a force of 55,000 people. They come from different backgrounds. They come from different areas, from different regions with different stories behind them. And their motivations are different. It is a fact that a government job is still looked at as a ticket to security. And it is a reality. But it is also a fact that there are some officers or even constables who are brilliant in what they do, who are dedicated, who really do apply their brains. The last 10 years have been a sort of a point of change for the police, because they have adapted themselves to modern policing techniques. Call data record analysis was not heard of when I started my job in 2008. CCTV footage was something we only saw in the movies. But today there have been instances where a woman's chain has been snatched from point A. Using live CCTV feed, they have actually caught the person at point B. There have been instances where they have analyzed the movements of somebody's cell phone location and concluded that he's on a train. And they've been waiting for him at the last station. And it is not easy for policemen or anybody who, after spending 10-15 years in a profession, have to suddenly reacquaint themselves or acquaint themselves with something that they had not heard of earlier. So there are success stories, but it would be very unfair if I do not acknowledge that there are also some really murky stories. We've recently seen what happened with the Antilla case. We've read about the downfall of the celebrated encounter cops. because if power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And it really was a scenario in the late 90s or the early 2000s when certain groups of policemen were untouchable and they thought they could get away with anything. Then there was a downfall. Then there was a rebuilding of the force's morale, the image. Once again, if you remember, the anti-narcotics cell suffered a similar loss of face when Baby Patankar, the drug peddler, was arrested and a lot of cops came under scanner. Today, the anti-narcotics cell is seizing mephedrone by the ton. They are going after only the manufacturers, not the street level peddlers. It's affecting the entire supply.
Right.
Similarly, the Mumbai police as a whole, they again built up their image. They did some great work. Then the Sachin Vazir thing happened, and again there was a severe loss of face. Today, again, they are going through a rise in the morale and the image. So those cycles will keep repeating. It was somebody who has lost his life savings in a cybercrime. If the police manage to freeze the transaction and reverse it within 1 month and return his money, that is all the man cares about.
True. No, this is absolutely fascinating. And as we go through the quiz, by the way, I'm going to continue to ask you a few questions. And yeah, we'll keep the conversation going because I think, Gautam, there's so much to hear here. I'm already sort of thinking, okay, what's the next thing I want to ask? But very quickly, what we do here is we come up with a set of 10 questions which are backed by data and statistics. It's normally from primary sources. Government, you talked about the NCRB report and questions in Parliament, etc. And then we frame these questions. They've got nothing to do with general knowledge, thank God. You just have to apply your mind. You just have to think of your biases and you just have to answer the questions. It's as simple as that. And got some absolute quizzards here who are really, really good at this. So you're going to get to see this as we go along. And yeah, I'm going to share my screen now and then you'll see the question. We'll have the scoreboard and we have a small little poll with 3 questions just to get people acquainted with the format, right? So here we go. I'm going to share my screen now and we can already see some names up. Rajpriya is trying her luck today. Adya, Chiradeep, Kartikeya, Kishore, Shri, Pushpa, Isha, Arya, one of our winners, Vinod, Gaurav, Shiranjani, Tom, Anu, Parisha, Pratham. I mean, the Chabra family, by the way, they join us from Delhi and they're absolute pros.
Wow.
So it's literally over a cup of chai. It's like Niharika, Mukesh, Nishant, it's fabulous. And then, of course, we have Adit, and I hope Udit is here as well. They join in from Ahmedabad. I hope that's right, Adit. And they are super good book reviewers. So I wish Udit were here because if he won, he would be writing a very interesting, nice, good, comprehensive review of the book. But Padmaja, I hope you can step in and do that as well. So with that, I'm wishing all of you all the very best. Again, 10 questions, no puzzle questions. So I hope it's a little easier this time. And you have the game pin and we're going to get into the poll questions. So again, no points for this one. And we're just asking people their opinion. This is the only time we're interested in opinions. Otherwise, we just get down to the business of data and facts. So it's a special with the author himself, Gautam Mengle. We're asking, what kind of books do you like? Do you like science fiction, historical fiction, crime thrillers, or autobiographies? We just want to test the waters in the room. Of course, you know what book you're going to get, but let's see what's the most popular one. Gautam must be on tenterhooks, huh? What if, there you go. Okay. So you're clearly on the right path. If you want to continue with crime thrillers, the India Fact Quizzes kind of approve. So that's great. And then, of course, we have autobiographies, science fiction, and historical. Okay, the next question. Which of the following types of thriller movies are you inclined to? We know it's a whole Hollywood season, Halloween season. So we're asking you whether you like crime thrillers, psychological thrillers, just plain good old horror movies, or no, this is not your scene at all. Frankly, it's not my scene at all. Okay, so I think psychological thrillers is what is very interesting, and then crime thrillers and horror shows, and there are very few boring people like me here in the group.
Even I would have voted for psychological thrillers.
Okay. And now we're asking everyone to just give us their favorite book, crime thriller, preferably, show or film that you've come across. I'm sure Intersections will be on that list soon. But for the time being, what is your favorite crime thriller book, movie, show? Again, we love to get word clouds from our quizzers because we use a lot of their ideas. So we'll say, which is your favorite holiday destination? And then, the team sort of reviews those lists, and we get some very good. Okay, Intersection comes up there. Clearly, you know what's the most popular one, but it's nice to see that there's Squid Game as well, and then there's Joker and Sherlock. I'm surprised Sherlock Holmes is there as well. Okay.
Reminds me of a very interesting conversation I had with the then DGP of Maharashtra, Sanjeev Dayal. I was at the Indian Express, and he had come down to the office for an open interaction with the team. And there were a lot of questions. Some of them were really serious. Some of them were light ones. And for example, and he's a very witty man. He's a very witty man. For example, when somebody asked him, what is the most difficult part of being DGP Maharashtra? He said, well, everything. I have no idea what you think is so lovable about it. So he is that level of witty. So somebody asked him about Sherlock Holmes. What he thinks of Sherlock Holmes as a story about crime investigation. And he said that I love the way it's written, but I observe that he mostly investigates and solves murders and those kinds of serious crimes. I'd like to see him solve a chain snatching.
Yes. All right. So with that, we're going to get into the quiz. Again, 10 questions, multiple choice and true or false. We have puzzle questions, and they can get very, very difficult. So we've wanted to be nice because we have a special guest, and we really want to put our good face forward to you, Gautam. So we're, going easy on our...
I'm already a fan, so that ship has sailed.
All right. So most of these questions are around rule of law, which is essentially police force. A lot of this comes from crime data, etc. You'll get the drift. Don't worry, you don't need to have read any of these reports, but just apply your observation skills, think a little out of the box, and test your bias. That is all you need to do to sail through this quiz and make sure that you get your hands on intersections. So here we go. We have the first question, and double points for this question. The Central Fingerprint Bureau is the apex body which provides support to nationalized banks, insurance companies like LIC, etc., Interpol or Aadhaar. Which option would you go for? Okay, so largely, and when you put something like Aadhaar there, I honestly would have gone for Aadhaar. But the 16 of you that went for Interpol, you are correct. It's a fascinating branch, that one. Gautam, have you come across it?
I have such fascinating stories because I wrote about the Mumbai Fingerprints Bureau when I was with the National Herald, and I spent like a good 6 hours in the office. But my favorite story is this. This senior executive with the ICICI Bank was murdered, in Kamla Mills compound, if you remember, in the parking lot. I mean, he has disappeared. He entered the parking lot, he disappeared. His body was found in Navi Mumbai. The car was seized later. After the accused was arrested and the car was recovered, a team from the Fingerprints Bureau went over the entire car to look for fingerprints. Because fingerprints don't always solve crimes, but fingerprints make for amazing corroborative evidence. I mean, it is the one thing that says that this person was here. CCTV footage can be manipulated. Medical reports can be switched, but a fingerprint is unique. And for 45 minutes, this one technician tried to get a good picture of the single thumb print that they found on the handbrake of the car. He ultimately had to bend over to get a good picture because there was so little space in that particular area. But every other fingerprint in the car was smudged, but only because the man had touched the handbrake several times, and that was the only surface which had captured the ridges clearly. That one thumbprint became the strongest evidence. And till that point, even in the lockup, the man was trying to mislead the police. But after that point, when his presence was pinpointed in the car, he had nothing else to say. He had no defense.
Wow. Okay. No, that's absolutely fascinating. We're going to see the scoreboard, and this means that these five, starting with Shri, Vinod, Darshan, Meet, and Akhil, have answered this question correctly and the fastest. But it's a very dynamic scoreboard, so we all know things change pretty rapidly. But I'm still wishing all five of you the very best. Okay, the next question. In 2019, because that's the latest data I have, All India Board for Fingerprints had a board examination. 2 out of the 3 toppers were men or women. Okay, so we also love these gender questions thrown in all of this. But it was interesting that in 2019, out of the 3, of course, the topper was a male, but there were 2 women who came second and third. And it's very interesting because a lot of the main awards are actually won quite a bit by women. So, Gautam, in your experience, is this one of those parts of the police force where you do see a lot of women?
No, I mean, the gender ratio is still a little unbalanced right now. We don't see as many women in the force as men, but the women I do see are doing an amazing job, I must say. Because, I mean, all the woke talk aside, it is still India and you are still a woman in India. So that comes with its own share of limitations and extra responsibilities. And these women actually manage all of that and they put in 8 hours of duty, which is really amazing. When I was self-employed around 6 months ago, I was working on a documentary which looks at female constables, and I had the chance to interact with a lot of them, and I had a chance to listen firsthand to the kind of adjustments they make in order to balance home and duty clearly. So this is really great work by some of them.
All right. So we're going to look at the scoreboard again. And let's see if something's happened here. It's now Vinod in the lead, followed by Naisi, Adya, Kartikeya, and Anu. And we'll get into the next question. True or false? India's crime rate peaked in 2020 over a 5-year period. Is this statement true or false? We're talking specifically of 2020. It's a landmark year for all of us, I think. Many things happened and didn't in that year. So we're asking whether India's crime rate peaked. So Gautam, do you have any inferences as to why you think the crime rate peaked? Was there in general disobedience or better rigor from the police? I don't know. I'm guessing here.
I think the desperation that came with the pandemic had a lot to do with it. Well, a lot of nightmarish stories I heard during that time. So, and we have to realize that a lot of crimes that we see as statistics have certain stories behind them. So, I mean, certain actions fit into certain sections of the Indian Penal Code. But crime rate, in my experience, peaks when a lot of people find very little options around them. So I think that is what happened.
No, that's that's a very interesting observation. And for the life of me, I was thinking, why is it that suddenly there was this peak? Is it because suddenly the police also got an opportunity to be more rigorous in the filing of FIRs and making sure the paperwork is in order, because finally that is what gets counted? Or is it that people just in general just was so desperate that just it was easy, it was more approachable to just go to the police because it was they were able to, which they probably weren't maybe before? I don't know. I was just sort of thinking about it, but what you said made sense because it was a very, very extraordinary time in that sense.
We also have to consider the fact that in a lot of cases, the complainants are the police themselves. In a time like the pandemic, when you got orders under the CRPC forbidding people to move around,
the violations
anybody found moving around, the violations, where there is no civilian complainant, the complainants are the police themselves.
Right. Now that's interesting. All right, so we'll take a look at the scoreboard. A little bit of a shift. It's Vinod, Naisi, Kartikeya, Adya, and Anu, and we'll get into the next question. Double points for this one. In 2021, this state reported the highest number of missing children, that is, below the age of 18. Is it Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, or Odisha? Okay. I don't blame those who actually went for Uttar Pradesh, because whenever I see questions, where you're talking about highest number, good or bad, invariably I will go to UP because that has such a large population and has, excess of everything. So I get it. But surprise, surprise, actually, Odisha and Madhya Pradesh got an equal number as options. And the correct answer is Madhya Pradesh. And for me, that was a bit of a shocker, simply because I would have either gone for UP. I'm sorry, my biased mind would have told me it's UP or Bihar. Don't look anywhere else. In terms of just population and in terms of just in general violence towards young people. So Madhya Pradesh, I think for me was a bit of a shocker. Any surprises there, Gautam?
Oh yes, I am surprised myself because I share the same bias. But I'm even more surprised about the fact that there are so many children reported missing. Because at least here in Mumbai, at least, not sure about the rest of Maharashtra, but at least in Mumbai and nearby commissionerates, what they do is that any case of a missing minor is by default registered as a kidnapping complaint. Even if the minor is traced within 5 hours, they take his statement and they file a closure report in court. But it's always an FIR under 363 IPC, because that adds to the seriousness of the case. It puts extra pressure on the investigators, and it psychologically it puts it in the back of their heads that boss, हमने ले तो लिया है kidnapping, सचमुच अगर kidnapping निकला तो क्या होगा? So even if it's a 16-year-old who has eloped with her boyfriend willingly, there will always be an FIR of kidnapping first. And that has helped a lot in the sense that uh, the number of cases that are being solved, the number of minors who are being traced, that number has gone up. So I'm quite surprised that other states are not following suit, because it is a very effective practice to follow, if you ask me.
We're getting a lot of the inside stuff, huh? So that's kind of interesting. Okay, so now it's Shri in the lead, followed by Chiradeep, Anu, Sambuddha Biswas, and Denel. So we've had a whole new rejig of the scoreboard, and we'll get into the next question and double point. Oh, we don't have double points for this one. In 2021, this state reported the highest number of deaths in police custody or lockup. Is it Bihar, Maharashtra, Gujarat, or Haryana? Any shocks there?
Not really.
No? Okay.
Not really.
I must admit, I was surprised. I was surprised. I didn't expect, I was even wondering why the state would have been on the list. Haryana, Bihar, again, my biased mind would say, you know, yes, they should be on the list, but I was a little surprised to see Gujarat. But yes, the 18 of you that went for Gujarat, you are correct.
A surprising majority in terms of the people who got it right.
Yes, yes, yeah. And we'll take a look at the scoreboard. It's Anu, followed by Sambuddha, Shri, Naisi, and Chiradeep. And we'll get into the next true or false. More police personnel were accidentally injured on duty with their own weapon compared to in confrontation with a terrorist or, a terrorist essentially. Is this statement true or false? So we're saying more police personnel were actually, this is self-inflicted. And this is true. It's very funny, Gautam, but in the NCRB report, it mentions, in confrontation with terrorists / extremists / jihadis.
I see. Okay, I did not know this.
Okay, there's some of these terms that come out in these reports that can shock you a bit. Have you come across any of these kind of funny terms or classifications in reports, crime reports?
I do come across, because I think the problem is that policemen get so used to speaking the legal language that they forget to simplify it sometimes. And that leads to a lot of confusion sometimes. I remember there was this case in the Anti-Corruption Bureau where the government servant arrested for accepting a bribe was shown as a public prosecutor with the BMC. And we burned the phone lines up and down trying to find out when did the BMC get a public prosecutor. And at the end of 3 hours, when the investigating officer of the case finally woke up, because he had gone back home after doing his night shift, when he woke up and returned my call, he told me it's actually the legal advisor, but the PP is what we refer to him as in common speak. So those kind of things happen.
All right, we'll take a look at the scoreboard, and okay, we have a new topper now. It's Sambuddha Biswas, followed by Shri, Naisi, Chiradeep, and Kartikeya. And I have a couple questions. Sorry.
No, let's look at the question first.
So this state has the highest rate of crime against children, and double points for this one. Is it Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Sikkim, or Haryana? Right. So because there was the missing children's cases highest in the state of Madhya Pradesh. I think that was on people's minds, and then they went for that. But how much of a shocker was this answer for you?
No, it was quite surprising because also because of the biases, and also because what gets reported in the statistics doesn't always get reported in the mainstream media. So it keeps happening, but we don't know about it. So I think that is the reason why this was a shock.
All right, we'll take a look at the scoreboard and another tumble. It's Shri, Chiradeep, Kartikeya, Sambuddha Biswas, and yeah, I think that's Shetty. All right. You were going to say something, and I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. I was just going to make a suggestion. If you're looking at data, you might want to look into the number of incidents where policemen got injured by their own weapons in the 2 years after 26/11.
Okay.
The 2008 attacks in
Yes.
Mumbai.
Yes.
1 year later, we got modern, sophisticated weaponry.
Yeah.
You might want to take a look at how many such incidents were reported in the 2 years following that.
Wow. No, that's fascinating. I think you've already kind of mentioned, you've said something. So clearly, when we modernize our police force, I think the emphasis on training and how to use the weapons is something that we probably need to focus more on, right?
There was a police constable who lost his life because the other constable sitting across from him in the police van was showing off his new pistol. So that says a lot about the way we handle our equipment,
No, that's very interesting. All right, we'll go to the next question. This is the most violent city in India towards children. 19 cities were evaluated in this data, and the options are Chandigarh, Jaipur, Mumbai, or Delhi. I'm telling you, we have a very evolved audience. They just have a pulse on things. And fact of the matter is, I would be terrified to leave my kids alone for even a minute without supervision in a city like Delhi. And clearly the data is corroborating that. So I don't, my bias is correct somehow because the data is also backing that up.
It's also interesting to note that hitting children is sort of part of the upbringing in India. Despite which, if there are more number of complaints, think of how serious that assault would be.
That is, and sometimes I feel as media and in general as citizens, we don't outrage enough because the casualness with which, some random person will come and pull a child's ear or, slap a kid without even a thought of, can you do it? What is the connection? I think we're very, very mean to children. And I think as a society, we need to reflect that if we're not nice to children, when these children grow up, they're not going to be very nice human beings, not for their own fault, but really it is our contribution to that. So
it's also the kind of message we are giving out to a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old or a 10-year-old, saying that if you do not behave in a certain manner, I hurt you physically. Simply because I can, because I have the physical strength to do that, and I have society on my side, and I have the authority on my side. That is what you're telling your own child, or your brother's child, or any child who is in every way weaker than you, and you being in the position of that privilege, are making a conscious choice to behave in this manner with the kid. Like your child gets in a fight and you punish him by hitting him. Like, think about it.
So here we have the scoreboard. It's now Chiradeep in the lead, followed by Shri, Shetty, Kartikeya, and Sambuddha Biswas. Don't give up till the end. The last question can just turn everything around for you. So just hang in there. That's all you need to do. True or false, more citizens, Indian citizens, went overseas for employment in the first 6 months of this year compared to the entire year last year, which is in the entire year in 2021. And we're comparing the first 6 months of this year. Is this statement true or highly exaggerated?
Love the choice of visuals you have for each question. Big shout out to whoever is choosing them.
So the answer is true. And it is, it is, I don't know what to say. But what I can definitely talk about is I literally handed over the selection of the GIFs to Meenal, and Meenal has got a very, very wicked sense of humor because she comes up with some very cool ones. And then she'll say, no, Rashmi, yours are even cooler. And I keep telling her, no, yours are even cooler. So we have a mutual admiration society, but I can depend on her to get the gems out. And I don't know where she gets them from.
She's a ninja.
So we have the data there, and this was actually shared in the Rajya Sabha a couple months ago. But the number of Indians that went overseas on employment or for private jobs in the first 6 months of this year was much more than in the entire year last year.
Can I give a dark twist to this conversation?
Go ahead.
Speaking of jobs abroad, employment abroad, there is currently a massive pan-Asia racket, which we should all be very careful about. It's called pig butchering. Pig butchering, where basically somebody posing as a member of the opposite sex approaches you on social media or dating apps or matrimonial websites, convinces you to invest in cryptocurrency, and you keep putting money and you keep seeing increasing profits. But the moment you try to withdraw those profits, you are blocked. But the person who loses money is only one victim of this racket. The more serious victims are the people who are made to do this. The people posing as girls or boys behind on the other side of the computer are trafficked from all over Asia, taken to these complexes in Thailand or Myanmar, which are guarded by armed guards, and they are made to do this all day. 3 young men from Bandra are stuck over there as we speak. And they're just 3 out of, I think, 70 Indians who were trafficked to those complexes this year. So, anybody looking for employment overseas, if you're being promised well-paying jobs in that belt, in the Thailand or nearby countries, please be very careful. These people have actual recruiting agents who find job seekers over here and put them in touch with the mafia that controls this racket. It's called pig butchering.
Thank you. No, that's very helpful. Yeah. Okay, so it's Chiradeep, Shri, Kartikeya, Shetty, and Sambuddha Biswas. And the next question, state with the highest representation or percentage of women in its police force. Is it Bihar, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, or Himachal Pradesh?
I'm very curious about this myself.
Any surprises there? 17 actually went for Tamil Nadu, but it is Bihar that does surprisingly well on this front. And to that, I just want to come back to a question where you were talking about this documentary you were working on, women constables, and Ananya, who's one of the participants, she said, have you seen any fierce women whose incident you clearly remember, or any of the constables you met? Was there any story which kind of stood out?
It would be unfair to point out at one single story because there are so many great stories. I've seen women who, I think the greatest quality of a female cop is the empathy they have. They become the de facto caretakers of all the missing kids who are brought to the police station. They automatically become the people who respond to calls about domestic violence. They become the people who respond to calls about senior citizens who are left on the streets, abandoned by their kids. They bring them to the police station. They admit them to hospitals. They even take care of the last rites when if they pass away. And at the same time, they are great investigators. There's this one woman, an officer, not a constable, an officer who responded to a call about a woman at the Azad Maidan who had gone into labor. Peak of the pandemic, the woman had nowhere to go. The police station gets a call saying that she was sleeping on the Azad Maidan and she's gone into labor. This female officer with 3 constables, they rush to the spot. It is raining. They make a makeshift shelter and they ensure a proper delivery. They cut the umbilical cord, they tie it off. One of the constables who was with her on that team, 2 years later, abhi 2 mahine pehle, he used that knowledge to ensure a safe delivery for another woman in a different area where he is now posted. Yes, there are millions of remarkable stories. So,
full goosebumps. Okay, no, it's fantastic. So yes, probably this is one statistic where Bihar really performs. I won't say very well, but much ahead of the other states. Himachal Pradesh is not doing too badly. Tamil Nadu is still, I think, around 17%. Maharashtra somewhere in the 12%, but we have that in the source, so I'm not going to dwell too much on that. And we'll take a look at the scoreboard. And it's Chiradeep, Kartikeya, Shri, Sambuddha, Biswas, and Shetty. We need to see some new names now on the scoreboard. So this is the last question, double points for this one. This state has the highest number of police stations in the country. Is it Maharashtra, Gujarat, Uttar Pradesh, or Tamil Nadu? You know, I thought I had given a hint with the Uttar Pradesh option that came earlier. But in fact, the 7 of you that went for Tamil Nadu, you are correct. They have around 1,990 actual police stations. And they're one of the few states that have an equal number of police vehicles, because sometimes some states fare very poorly where they have police stations, but they do not have an SUV or a vehicle attached to the police station, which also does become a little problematic. So I wish, and Gautam, you've seen this in a city like Bombay, the police stations are probably still not up to scratch, not really the best place where you can get a good work-life balance. But in your experience of whatever you've seen, how does Bombay or how do the police stations in some parts of the country stack up to the others?
It depends on where the police station is located, honestly. It depends on the kind of facilities they get in that particular area. The Khar police station caters to some of the more well-off people in the city, but the police station itself is next to a garbage dump, like a dumping ground. There are certain police stations which were built decades ago without any thought to any kind of planning, and they get flooded every year. Like every monsoon, every photographer with every newspaper will park himself outside that police station saying कि यहाँ से अच्छा photo इस बार मिलेगा. And that's been happening for years and nothing can be done because where is the land? The Amboli police station was started in the compound of the Oshiwara police station, in a structure that used to be a gymnasium earlier. They have a separate building for themselves now in their own jurisdiction. But there are a lot of funny stories about this all the time. The Sayan and the Matunga police stations are in the same compound because their jurisdictions are adjacent,
Joining.
right? Nobody knows that the Sion police station is located in the Matunga police station's jurisdiction and vice versa. So half the people who go into one police station are sent to the other one, and they're like, police हमको घुमा रही है, हमारा complaint नहीं लेना चाहिए. But I'll say this that a lot of people think that a high number of police stations means that the crime rate is very bad in that area, but it might not always be the case. A high number of police stations also indicates that more resources are being devoted towards law enforcement. For example, Maharashtra has at least one cyber police station in every major city. Mumbai alone has 5 cyber police stations. Plus, we have managed to increase the number of other non-cyber police stations over the years. We've got coastal police stations, and we have made sure that very few, if none, very few police stations are struggling with the fact that our area is bigger than our manpower. So a high number of police stations might always not be a bad thing. It might not reflect
On the law and
badly
order
on the
Yeah.
city.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So with that, we come to the end of the quiz, and happy to share the podium. In number 3 position is Shri,
Congratulations, Sri.
and we have Kartikeya Tiwari
Great,
in the second
Kartikeya.
spot. And in the top spot this week, it's Shri.
Shirdi.
So congratulations, Adit. You didn't do too badly. And neither did you, Sambuddha. So just keep at it. And in the meantime, the 3 of you will receive a personalized signed copy by the author of Intersections, Gautam Mengle. So thank you so much, Gautam, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And I hope Chiradeep, Kartikeya, and Shri enjoy reading the book. And it was a great experience for me. Like I said, it was my first quiz where I was part of it on the panelist side and not the participant side. But thank you really for this.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, we'll be back next week at 5 p.m.